Yeah, Mark, can we go back to the fouling up three?
I think we've covered everything with fouling up three.
Mark, the paint protection tonight and that combined with how efficient you were on the other end, philosophically, just how important was that for you in this series, given the matchup and being able to execute it tonight? How big was that?
Yeah, they pound the paint with the ball, and it leads to fouls. It leads to offensive rebounds, and it leads to efficient shots. Even some of the floaters they shoot, especially Jokic, obviously, are highly efficient looks. So, I thought we did a really good job tonally in the game with our energy and effort. Obviously, that wasn't their best. They're going to play much better in Denver. But, I was impressed with the way we came out.
Mark, with Jay Will specifically, what'd you think he added to that early punch and the Jokic defense?
Yeah, he was awesome. He was really good. He's just a guy that is really connected to the team. He's got a lot of pride in being on the team, being a member of this team. And he has a lot of pride in how he plays. I don't think he thought he played great last game. I can't read his mind, but I've been around him long enough to know I think he was pissed with how he played individually. And I knew he'd be ready. He's a competitor and a gamer, so he's a guy that no matter when you go to him, you can be sure he's going to be ready to rock.
And I'm not sure if you remember this, but I remember in Vegas when you guys played the Rockets that there was a late skirmish, and the guys the following day were talking about you showing that clip to them and trying to preserve that message of like not backing down to teams. How have you sort of tried to preserve that message throughout the year leading up to this series, and how do you think that showed today?
I didn't really look at tonight as a response as much as I looked at tonight as just us being who we are, and that's how we've been all season. We don't really respond to the last game. When we win, we don't have more confidence. When we lose, we don't have more urgency. I think this team has a really good baseline that we just try to return to every day when the sun comes up and we have a game. And I thought that's what tonight was.
Yeah, Mark, you guys talk about all season how you want to be a fast-paced team. After last game where they controlled the pace, how important was it for you guys to come into this game playing extremely fast as you guys did?
Yeah, I thought we controlled a lot of the pace in the first one, just to be clear on my opinion of it. I thought our pace in that game was pretty good. I thought it was good again tonight. I thought tonight might have looked faster because we were getting stops. That was, I think, a big difference between last game and this one, is we were able to get stops. We were able to secure rebounds, especially in the first half, and that allows us to be faster.
You got stops again tonight, but didn't lead to as many offensive rebounds. What did you feel like was working for you guys?
Their offensive rebounds or ours? Yeah, I just thought we did a good job on the glass. That was a huge part of game one. When you really unpack it, our first shot defense was really good. The free throws hurt us, transition hurt us, rebounding hurt us. I thought we got all three of those things back under control tonight in that game.
Mark, I know you try to be unaffected by anything else going on in the league, and maybe you are, but it's been a crazy 3 days where home team can't seem to win. You guys broke that streak tonight. Was that you were even aware of that? And what do you do when just kooky things like that seem to keep happening?
I'm aware of it. I'm checking the scores. I'm not under my bed, but at the end of the day, every game's different. Every team's different. Tonight was an unwritten game, and we went out there and competed together.
Mark, related to the early Jay Will minutes, just how valuable is that for guys like Hartenstein and Chet, just to manage their minutes and have another body to throw at Jokic?
It's helpful, but I think it's more helpful to the team. I think when we lose game one, and then we come in and we're betting on him, we're betting on Isaiah, we're betting on Wiggins. I think it breathes life into the team. Kaysen, and those guys delivered, and I think that breathes life into the team. And we have a team that's been highly connected all season. And every time a guy, like I said, I don't think he was pleased with how Jay Will. I don't think he was pleased with how he played last game. And for him to stand up, that really gives the team a lot of oxygen.
And then just what do you think of Shai's overall game?
I mean, 34 points on 13 shots is hard to do, so that was impressive. But I thought his floor game was really good. I thought his pace was really good. I thought he was off it early. He made them pay when they overhelped on him. He had the ball ahead of him all night, so he got his teammates shots too. It wasn't just a one-man show, and he was super efficient. I mean, he had an unbelievable blend tonight.
Mark, you're with these guys day in and day out, so you know the work that they put in every day. But what does it do for the young guys like Kenridge and Jones that get some run tonight?
It's great, and we need. I mean, K-Rich played minutes in the Memphis series. Mitchell played minutes in the Memphis series. In the balance of the game, we haven't gotten to them yet in this one, but there are situations when we would use those guys, and so their ability to stay ready is critical. Top to bottom, we need everybody.
Mark, I get what you're saying about you didn't necessarily think this was a response, but Shea comes in here the other night and says basically it's going to be fun to see how this team deals with their first real taste of playoff adversity this season. And then he comes out in the first quarter and basically was as dominant as you could be. What did you think about the way that the guy who's the leader of your team came out and set the tone?
Yeah, I mean he set a great tone in the game tonight. Was outstanding. He's done that time and time again. My point with the response was just that we have a pretty high baseline. And we want to play to that, win or lose, and I thought that's what we did tonight. We were who we are.
What were your thoughts on how Chet responded tonight?
I thought he was great. He was another one. Him, Dub. I thought Dub's force in the game was a real tone setter. I thought Chet's competitiveness in the game, real tone setter. I thought he was really competitive on the glass, even the ones he didn't get. Offensively, he had a good blend as well. I thought everybody, contributed to the game.
Yeah, and then the starting lineup was really clicking tonight. Just thoughts on how that lineup works.
Well, as I said to you pregame, I wouldn't overreact to samples this small. You asked about the same lineup before, small sample. Tonight's a small sample. We're playing the guys we think will give us the best chance to win, and they performed great tonight. And Game 3 is a new game.
How valuable is it to have a guy like Jay Will who can also space the floor so you can go 5-out spacing while also not having to sacrifice, size and rebounding?
He's pretty unique in that way. He puts them in dilemmas. They have to close to him. He shoots it with unbelievable confidence. Or his teammates find him. At times they had guards on tonight. They cross-matched even off of him. They usually do that with Chet, but they did that with him, which is a sign of his shooting gravity. But then he's a great physicality player, defensive rebounder, point of attack defender on bigs. But the biggest thing with him is he's just like a total compete together player. He's unbelievably competitive. He's an unbelievable team guy. And when you let him touch the game, like I said, I think it breathes life into the team.
Coach, it's one thing to win by 10.5 points, as the experts would have thought, but by dominating in this fashion, does this switch the momentum in this series?
The score's 1-1. That's it. That's the score after tonight.
15 made threes the other night, 16 tonight. Shot better, but didn't take as many tonight as you did the other night. What did you feel like the difference was in the attempts that you guys, or looks that you guys got tonight?
I thought the looks the other night were really good. I thought the looks tonight, I haven't looked at the data on that yet, but I thought the looks tonight, looked pretty good. Obviously, we shot it well. Like I said, I thought tonight the game's interconnected, so I thought our stops tonight really put us at offensive advantages. And this is a great offensive team, Denver, and so that's easier said than done. But I thought we did a really, really good job on that end of the floor, and it gave us a thrust coming up the floor on a lot of possessions.
How much did it help that, the fact that your bigs can get in foul trouble, like some ticky-tack fouls like in the first quarter, like they did the other night?
Yeah, it's helpful. At the end of the day, the game's going to get called how it gets called. We were in foul trouble early in the third. The only pathway for a team to come back in a game like that is to stop the clock, put them on the line, and they were in the bonus like 2 minutes into the third quarter. So that was a little concerning, but those guys did a good job. We just have to find our rhythm against this team. They're a really good offense, obviously, great offense. Jokic and Murray are great top-end players, and that takes some getting used to. You got to be really, really physical with them. Otherwise, they have their way with you, but you got to do it with great discipline because they do a really good job of drawing fouls.
And it seemed like, maybe you tried in game one, but it seemed like tonight Jokic was kind of confused you had some doubles coming from the baseline, and when he turned baseline, there was a guy coming late and kind of confused him where it was coming from.
Yeah, the schemes didn't change. This was the same plan. I just thought, like I said, we get a little bit more used to the opponent, which is what happens in these series. You get more familiar. That was game one. We hadn't played in a period of time, and we certainly haven't played this version of them, in a minute. And so we didn't really change much. I just thought we were a lot sharper. And I didn't think they played their best. I think they're going to be a lot better in game three.
As young as this team is, and it's talked about a lot how young this team is, there's a couple of times where the physicality, there was some pushing, some shoving, chance for some skirmishes. They seem to handle it pretty maturely. Do you want to talk about the maturity of this team, not kind of taking the bait on some of that?
Yeah, they've always showed maturity, but physicality is part of the playoffs. It's going to be physical out there, and if you want to win in the playoffs, you have to rise to the level of physicality that's going to be allowed in the game. And so, we understand that. That's not new to us, and that's what we're going to do.
Coach, in terms of just coverage on Jokic, was that a point of emphasis, just the way you guys were able to collapse on him? Not just one player in particular, but just as a team, and of course the way you were able to finish those fast break opportunities. What did you see differently tonight compared to what happened in Game 1?
Like I said, I just thought we were just a little sharper. There's a familiarity thing. In the first game of a playoff series, you're introducing yourself to the opponent and vice versa, and we rolled out the same plan. We didn't change a thing tonight. All we did was learn from the first game, how we could execute better. There are some adjustments we can pivot to that we feel like we can go to at this point, but we wanted to see how this plan worked first. And I thought we were just a lot sharper in it tonight.
Yeah, Mark, anything you didn't like about tonight?
There's always plays that you don't like. I thought there was times where we weren't overly organized on offense. There was times I messed up on offense. A couple of the players were very quick to point that out. And so there's always things you can learn from, and there's positives from losses. It's a long game.
Mark, I know you said the scheme on Jokic didn't change. You just felt like the intensity or the sharpness maybe changed. Did you sense a swing in sort of the way the officials maybe managed him and the way you were able to be physical with him?
Not really. I thought the beginning of the second half, I think, showed this was they called the game very consistently. They did a really good job, but tighter than some of these other games that you're watching. I thought that whistle, again, the first two games, these games were called tighter, in my opinion, than some of the other ones that I'm seeing. But both were called consistently. Tonight was consistent, which is all we can ask for. If they come out and set a tone in the game for how it's going to get called, we can adapt to that. And if it's fair and consistent, which it's been, then we have no problem with it.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep, thank you.